control of your life. Break the chains and rise. No more feeling powerless, no more shame. Take your power, break out of the pain. Because it's more than fornication, more than procreation. It's not just self-stimulation. Sex energy is for creation and transformation into a new destination. Porn Talk, yeah. Change your heart from dark to light. Porn Talk, yeah. Break free, take back your power and rise. I said take back your power. I said take back your power. Take back your power and rise.
This is Porn Talk. This is Porn Talk Live. Here is your host, Eric Zuzak.
Welcome to Porn Talk, where we delve deep into the realms of personal development and transformation. Today, we have a remarkable guest joining us, Yarona Boster. With a wealth of experience as a communication master, advanced certified life coach, and TEDx speaker, Yarona is here to share her insights on overcoming addictions and breaking belief systems. Drawing from her 17 years of experience in human development, psychology, and coaching, Yarona has empowered countless individuals to harness the power of communication and transform their lives. From CEOs to parents, her guidance has touched lives across diverse arenas, providing the effective communication is the cornerstone of personal and professional success. But that's not all. Yarona's impact extends beyond the spoken word. She's a best-selling author and a passionate advocate for parenting with her forthcoming book, Unspoken Signals, poised to revolutionize essential parenting skills. And let's not forget her latest collaboration with industry icons like Anthony Robbins and Brian Tracy in cracking the rich code. So join us as we explore the intersection of communication, personal growth, and overcoming addiction with the incredible Yarona Boster. Welcome, Yarona.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric. Thank you for having me here today. I really appreciate being here.
Absolutely thrilled to have you. So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm a parent. I was a daughter. Now I'm an orphan. That's how I look at it. See, because death, I used to think it was bad. I did.
Used to think death was bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not. It's inevitable. And the thing is, once we actually make space for the radical acceptance that death is inevitable, we can actually live our lives to the fullest. I'm not saying accept death and just wait for it to happen. What I'm saying is that there's a space to make as much preparation as you can and then let it go. Let it go and let it be.
And how could someone that is having challenges with addictions or just challenges in life, how could that help them?
Well, sometimes what happens when we develop a belief system that we need something, we bypass the ability to look at it as a tool for living. And what happens when we move into that place, we can't get unstuck from that place. So the best way to get unstuck is to recognize that inevitably, this place that we're in right now, is it helping us live optimally or suboptimally? Is it helping us adapt and be flexible and balanced and nuanced in our world? Or is it putting us in a place of maladaptive acceptance where we're just behaving in a way that's unhealthy for our best optimal living. So one of the things I talk about with death is that honestly, and this goes for anything, if you take something and you put a belief on that thing without using your skills to investigate that thing, dive into the understanding of what it is, and you just hold it in a belief system, you can never move away from that belief system because now you're stuck with it. You're in
Per-
belief.
Perhaps it would be helpful to let everybody know why you're talking about death, because you've experienced a lot of it.
Yeah. So the chapter that I wrote for the book, for the co-authorship book, was about the investment every parent needs. And in truth, I believe it's the investment every person needs, which is to be prepared for the inevitability of death. Stop talking about if I die, say when I die. And by doing certain steps, you can be best prepared by actually diving in and talking about it. A lot of times I hear people say, no, I won't die for a long time, especially for their loved ones. Nothing will happen to me. I'll be fine. But we can't make that promise. And this is what I've come to realize in all the experiences I've had around death and the dying experience is that we can't make that promise. And when we do, we set ourselves up and others that we love for failure. So the best thing we can do is operate with the assumption, yes, I'm going to die. So how do I want my loved ones to be and to move forward without me when I'm gone? And when you start to ask that question, you start to investigate all the variety of ways in which you can do this. There are a lot of things, and this requires conversations with, it doesn't matter what age your child is. You could have an adult child, you could have, an elderly parent, you could have a young child, but there are ways to age appropriately at various stages and steps, have these conversations around death and loss. And when you do, you start into the preparation. And then there are steps you can take to actually prepare, so that the best thing you can do is ensure that your loved ones are left knowing you loved them and preparing them for that by allowing them to be in it with their emotions instead of having to argue over the details. So, for instance, I tell everybody you need to not just have a will, especially if you have young children, but you need to not just have a will, you need to have an advanced will. That's a living will, an advanced directive, my apologies, that tells people what would you like for them to do in the event that you aren't dead, but you're incapacitated to a point in which you cannot take care of your own needs. And
Yeah.
somebody else needs to take those directions for you. So let's say you are in a coma or you're brain dead or things of that nature. What do you want to happen? And then the next step is durable power of attorney. You have to ensure that somebody in your life has durable power of attorney. Power of attorney is mostly on the financial side. Durable power of attorney is to make medical decisions, life care decisions, and financial decisions for you. When somebody has that, then they already know what you want. You've spoken at great length with them. I had that for both of my parents. And my father and I had a lot longer of conversations around this because he had a longer time with his cancer. And my mother and I didn't have as much conversation around it, but she knew that I would do what I really believed she would want me to do.
Who did you all lose?
Oh gosh. Aside from my parents, who I took care of until their deaths. And by the way, when I say I took care of them, I physically took care of their needs. They remained at home, and we had hospice coming in to check on us, but hospice doesn't do 24/7 care.
Right.
I also lost my niece. I lost my nephew. I lost my brother last year and my father-in-law last year. I've also lost friends and other loved ones, cousins, and some really close friends and relatives over the years. And it's been, yeah, just last year was my brother and my father-in-law.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear about all the loss. That is a lot. But you Yep. Some people don't do so well and revert to unhealthy behaviors to cope with things like death.
Yep.
What are some healthy things that you were able to do to help with? I mean, that's a tremendous amount of loss.
Mhm.
What healthy things were you able to do?
The first and foremost is not to cap your emotions. How you feel and how you think about something, there's no bad or good on that. It's the behaviors, the actions you take that have repercussions and consequences. So allowing yourself to fully feel everything you're feeling, the rage, the sadness, the helplessness, the fear, all of those things, really leaning into the pain of it all allows you to process it. But you cannot do that if it's stuck inside of you. You
Yeah.
do have to get it out of you. If you don't get it out of you, you're not allowing the pot to what's happening is you keep that lid on the pot and it's just going to boil over. And it's going to often boil over into an unhealthy place, into a maladaptive behavior, into a behavior that is not healthy for you. So the more you force that lid down, the worse it bubbles out and just streams right out and washes out the flame, or just does something really bad. So you have to remove the lid from your emotional processing and thought processing, and allow it to be free. Allow it room to breathe. Allow it space to live.
Yeah.
Once you do that, then you have a better understanding of, how you want to move forward with it. One of the things that I see a lot of, and this is very true for a lot of men. Men really have been taught over many, many years to just keep it all bottled inside.
Mhm, mhm.
But that suppressive nature of pushing it back down, it doesn't mean that it's gone. It just means it's moving into spaces and places in your life that are unhealthy.
Yeah. And even to unhealthy places in your body, like, forming into like cancer and things like that. And
Yeah.
what you got a lot of wisdom there with saying to feel your feelings, because I'm thinking of a particular client right now who's just really closed off from his emotions because, particularly with porn addiction, we use it to numb, cope, and escape from feelings. Like you completely put your you're looking at a screen, you put your blinders on and you're oblivious to the whole world. And
Yeah.
so for someone to say, "Hey, stop and feel your feelings,"
Yeah.
it's like, "No, I don't want to do that. Those are scary.
Yeah.
They hurt. They're painful. I might cry."
And I know why. I know why. Because they think that that's going to break them. And something that I learned, I was talking with someone else who's also does grief work, and this happens a lot in grief. We think that if we think about the thing that's so painful to us, or if we lean into the thing that's so painful to us, that we're going to break, that we're going to lose ourselves to the pain, to the sadness. But the truth is, it's kind of like when a marathon runner is running, or, when an what's the Ironman, challenges, when they're at the last leg, and it feels like, no, I need to shut down. The truth is, the closer you are to that pain, the closer you are to your breakthrough, the closer you are to the other side, to the freedom on the other side of what that pain is. So keep pushing.
Break on through to the other side.
Yes,
Break on
exactly.
through to the other side. As you can
Yeah,
see, I'm not a professional singer.
that's okay. I don't fault you for it. My name actually means she shall sing, and I do.
Oh,
My
really?
parents had some divine intervention or something when they named me. I don't know, but
Yorona means she
she
saw
shall sing. Yes, it's a tongue twister.
Silly Sally sat on the seashore counting
Yeah, I
6
can't do that one.
tiny she.
I could never do that one. I was having enough trouble saying a different word the other day. I was like, why? Why do some words just land and then they're like they don't want to come out of your mouth? I have no idea.
Well, Yorona, why don't we sing about something a little different? This is worth
Sure.
singing about. So you are in a book that is the intro is written by Brian Tracy,
Yep.
icon, And Tony Robbins, or Anthony Robbins, is in the book as well. Like you can't really get in far as personal development, you can't really go any higher. Like, I don't know. I mean, God, I don't, I don't know. So
The
that is
Teresa
awesome.
Gandhi.
Cracking the Rich Code. And by the way, this is a project. This is a long-term project that I'm working on.
Yeah.
That is called "Quit Porn and Grow Rich," because in the book "Think and Grow Rich" by Napoleon Hill, there's a whole chapter on the mystery of sex transmutation. That's the title of the chapter, and he talks about how it was perplexing to him that men or people weren't really becoming, back then he was, he was just studying guys, that they weren't becoming successful until their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he was like, why is this? And he figured it out. It's because they finally learned to channel their sexual energy.
Yeah.
They stopped, like, they weren't masturbating as much. They stopped chasing skirts. Like, they literally started to channel their sexual energy. And when that happened, behold, they became successful. And so in your latest book, Cracking the Rich Code, inspire us here. Say a few syllables.
Well, I think, and here's the fallacy. When we think about growing rich, most people immediately think of wealth, but there is an inner investment in yourself that you have to make. And I believe that, so Jim Britt is actually the visionary author for the books. And my volume was actually volume 12. So he's been doing this for a while with incredible leaders in the world of, just incredible thought leaders, incredible people in the world who have had a lot of success in their own personal lives. And yet maybe they're not as well known because, there's a fallacy with social media. I'll get to that in a minute. But in any event, Jim was actually Tony Robbins's mentor. Jim was one of the first 50 speakers, one of the first international speakers to really start the movement and the momentum of, speaking worldwide and having that be a thing. And this was like back in the 80s. But one of the incredible pieces to this is to the understanding that, it went from the tangible of rich to the more internalized wealth that we can find, and the internalized richness of our lives that we can find. And so that has been a bit of a transition. And I do believe that it's up to us to decide what that's supposed to look like. We all have our own autonomous thought process on this. So like I said, with my chapter, I believe every person should invest in the ability to really move forward in ensuring that their demise, that everything is settled around it. Because what are two things that break families apart the most? Do you know?
Money
and death.
Okay.
And oftentimes, even in the dying experience, I have seen and been witness to and experienced it myself, where families are tearing each other apart because they believe this is what's in the person's best interest when they're in the dying process. They believe, no, this person believes this. No, we should keep going with the treatments, but the cancer is growing. And so what do? Maybe it's not in the best interest of the person, and so forth. So because the pinnacle of it all is that money and life. And so when we can really look at it from that perspective of saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this decision out of your hands. Now we've given the best investment we can to the people we love, because now they don't have to make those decisions when they're in heightened states of emotional distress.
Wow. I knew the money part of it. I did not know the death part of that. That's really interesting. And again, this is another stressor. Someone's dying. What do you do with that? Do you fall back into addiction, or do you move forward? And sounds like you have some type of process
Yeah.
for that. Um,
Well, I will tell you one other thing. So there's one other thing that breaks families apart: beliefs and values. Because when we go into a place where we get so stuck in a belief that we are not willing to accept there might be a different way of looking at something, we're willing to pull away from anybody who doesn't agree with that belief. Beliefs are really strong, really strong. I mean, they are the pinnacle of a lot of people's existence.
so the three things that break up families, is that what you're saying?
Yes, those are the three core things: money,
Money,
death,
death,
and beliefs and values.
beliefs. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting too. The beliefs and values, like we said before, I hit the record button. When I first started the podcast, Porn Talk, I thought there was still could be a healthy use of pornography, like maybe a couple in the bedroom or whatever. But then I learned so much about like sex trafficking and children and all this stuff and also I learned that tube sites, like pornographic tube sites, they may appear to be in the business of pornography. They're actually in the business of money laundering for like drug cartels and things like that. So I'm like, I can't in good conscience anymore say that there's a healthy use of porn. However, like I said, there's things are, the older I get, there's things are really not so black and white.
Mm.
So you wanna
Sure, I'll expand on what I was saying earlier when we were talking. Um, I believe that there is a way of looking at things and figuring out whether for you they are a net positive or a net negative. Because one given thing in and of itself is neither all good or all bad. If you really look at it from its own space and place, if you take it away from a person and you just say this is a thing, let's just identify it as a thing, even a tool like a social media, like a computer, right? Everything is a tool until it becomes an addiction, a crutch, or a weapon. The best way we can operate is by using it as a tool. However, if we're leaning into any of those other fluctuations, we need to decide, is this going to be a net positive or a net negative for me? So pornography in and of itself, you could look at it and you could say for some people, they can use it as a tool. However, if you're thinking about where it's coming from, then you need to consider maybe where it's coming from is too much of a net negative for someone else who's creating this, that it's not beneficial to me because now I'm utilizing this for this purpose. So I do believe that people now there are a lot of people who call themselves sex workers and who are really happy with the work they're doing, and they're doing it solely for their own being, and they're really taking a lot of power into it. And so there's a place and a space for them. Okay, great. And if they're creating pornography for other people and they're like, yeah, go for it because that gives me my money and I'm really happy doing this work, then those are the people that pornography that you can say, okay, I can utilize this tool and enjoy it, spice up my sex life with my partner and everything, and by using this, because we also know that men are very, very, very visual and tactile creatures. So
absolutely.
for them, it's almost a necessity to be in that space of using all of those senses to experience sex.
So what were the three things again to
Yeah.
look at?
So when we look at the thing, we have to think about it from this perspective. Let's look at the context of where this is coming from.
Okay.
Can I use it in balance in my life? Meaning that can I ensure that it's used as a tool, not as a weapon, a crutch, or an addiction? And do I have the flexibility and the nuance to have conversations with people to ensure I'm still keeping in this plan? And do I have the flexibility to say, maybe I need to walk away from this because I'm starting to move into some of those other areas?
Tool, weapon, or addiction. I like that.
Yes.
The listener, are you using pornography as a tool, a weapon, or an addiction. And like a weapon, you could think about.
Also, there's one other piece though to that.
Oh, okay.
Also a crutch. A crutch is right between being a tool and an addiction.
Okay.
Okay. Because a crutch is the implication that you're using it to walk, but you're using it to do something, but now you're kind of relying on it to do that thing for you after a time. And then suddenly that moves into addiction territory where you can no longer do that thing without that thing.
So a tool, a crutch, a weapon, or an
Or a device.
addiction. So if using it as a tool, maybe that's okay. A crutch, still maybe. A weapon, that like exploiting someone else with pornography, like sextortion, or
Exactly.
an addiction. And of course, people, not all, but if you're listening to this, most probably fall into that camp.
Mhm.
And there is there is what I call quote unquote organic porn, and that is supposedly certified that it's not come from sex, it's not sex trafficked. These people are there willingly, they are enjoying it. But you're not going to find that on tube sites. I want to make that like that. What I'm talking about, that quote unquote organic porn, that is a paid only.
Yeah.
You'll find that as a paid only thing.
Mhm.
It is not on tube sites.
Yes.
It's not free. It's not
Exactly.
free.
It's not free. And again, you have to be certain of that, right? And there are couples who are maybe, you know,
Yeah.
not voyeurs, exhibitionists, and they
Mhm.
really get off on the idea of giving that to somebody else to watch, and that
Yeah.
in and of itself is the thing that gets their bedroom on fire. Okay,
Right.
wonderful. So if that's the case, and they're like, "Wow, can you imagine somebody's watching us and it gets them all lit up?" Great. Okay. So once again, it's like you have to think about that, but that's the context part of this that really needs to be taken into consideration. In context, you have to look at this thing and say, okay, is it being used as a weapon? Is it being used as a tool, for these people to enjoy themselves? And so then how do I want to use it as a tool on my side of the fence? And now is it being used as a crutch? Like now they're kind of the only time that they can be intimate is when they're ensuring that they're being, seen, viewed somewhere. And then is it an addiction where they have to ensure that that's happening in order for them to even be able to function as an intimate couple?
Yeah. I love those 4 steps, I guess you could say, to determine, like, is this, what was the language that you used around that?
Okay. So to determine whether it's a tool, a weapon, a crutch, or an addiction, you have to use nuance, context, flexibility, and balance. Those are the 4 things you must use to determine those things if you're using something in that way. So you have to look at it from a nuanced perspective, and this goes for beliefs too. If you are so hardcore held onto a particular belief about something, you have to ask yourself, am I using this belief as one of those things? And the way you ask yourself is to look at it in balance, in context, in nuance and flexibility. Do you have the flexibility to take a step away from that belief system or away from that thing that you may be using as a tool, weapon, addiction, or crutch, and say, okay, what do I believe about this thing? Okay, now I need to investigate this. Do I have the flexibility to move away from this and investigate other perspectives? Do I have the ability to look at the nuance of those other perspectives? Or am I just facing that perspective head on and saying, nope, I disagree entirely? And that's it. Because if you bounce back immediately and you go, no, 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 something is going on there that you need to actually lean into investigating deeper. And when you start to understand that in nuance, context, flexibility, and balance, that's where you can find your balance to use those things as a tool. So, religion is a beautiful thing in its purest tool use of form. A belief system is a beautiful thing in its purest tool use as it in and of itself. But as soon as you start using it as a weapon to punish other people, you know what? Maybe you need to reconsider.
Hmm.
Am I flexible enough to consider what the damage is doing to other people?
Wow. That's eye-opening to think, because I mean, how many wars have been fought in the name of religion?
And currently,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
porn is for some is religion. Like, I remember when I first started, and I was shocked at the amount of, like, just negative, like they started, the powerful Eric thing, like, "Oh, you think you're powerful? You're not powerful. You're not even an average guy." Like, because they don't know my story
Mhm.
of powerful Eric. Um, so, well, let's talk about the belief system in regard to, like, kids and early childhood development, because that's
Mhm.
your specialty.
Yes,
Um,
this is a hard one.
so,
Well, okay, and I was going to go somewhere, but I'll go there in a moment. But I had so I often had this thought. My sister and I used to jokingly say, amazingly, the kids don't pop out with their own user specific manual, you know, and that manual doesn't go along with every second of their life to ensure we know what we're doing before we get there, right? So we're always behind the ball on this.
mhm.
Additionally, no society requires you to learn about how to be a healthy parent and what you need to know about a human development before you become a parent. I believe the irony of being human is that we pop out of the barn before we know what's going to happen once the horse starts running crazy, and then we're trying to corral it back in.
Yeah.
So I have a firm belief system that people like myself and people like the other people I've worked with over the many, many years should not be the only people, the experts knowing about child development should not be the only ones to know about it. I believe if every parent actually knows and learns about what they need to know, and it doesn't matter whether your child is 2 or 22, if you learn about what you need to know about what's going on behind the human development and the psychology of that human development, you'll have a better ability to step into the engagement with your child more proactively instead of reactively. So I teach all of those things. And one of the things I have seen is that we create other human beings with already a lot of preconceived beliefs and notions about what's going to come. So when what does come is a totally autonomous other human being, and they're not meeting the beliefs that we believe they should or the expectations we put on them, we think either we blame ourselves or we blame them or we project the blame onto them. And I believe it's absolutely pivotal that every human being understand that once they leave the womb, they're no longer yours in any way, shape, or form. It's just up to you to learn the journey you need to learn to get them to be a whole, capable adult. So here's the thing, though. When they're infants, our survival mechanism has designed us in a way that we are solely reliant upon another human being. So yes, when they're infants and they're young, it is our job to protect them. But that job does not remain. And this is where flexibility and balance come in. Because over time, we have to stop protecting them and start giving them the tools and the strategies to protect themselves, to learn how to protect themselves.
So to protect themselves, they need to have, like, when they're in the bassinet, or in the cradle, we need to put a smartphone in front of them
Oh, God.
as a pacifier, right?
No, 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 no.
No?
Okay, so this is a
What?
really big, this is a situation in which parents these days have, oh my gosh. Okay, the science that we now know, because once again, we let the cat out of the bag before we knew what it was going to do. So when technology first boomed out, People were like, this is going to be incredible. This is going to be amazing. It's going to change and revolutionize the way we live. And yes, it has. And there have been some incredible advancements with the technology that's come out. But we more often than not use it as a crutch or an addiction or even a weapon. And when what we now know, because we've now gotten the data and the research to show that when you hand a child a device, a handheld device, you hit the same receptors in the brain as drugs and alcohol. So I say to parents all the time, listen, are you planning on opening up your liquor cabinet and saying, here to my 5-year-old, here, go have at it? No, you're not, right? So you don't want to do the same thing with a device.
Well,
Yeah.
let me interrupt. Here's another one that's even better. So I asked a security expert, for digital security and stuff like that. We were talking. He's going to be on the podcast, and asked him, so when's a good time to, give your kids, at what age should you give your kid a smartphone, a iPad, something like that? He said, and all seriousness, he said, well, when you think they're ready to watch porn, because they're either going to find it accidentally, or a friend is going to show it to them, or they're going to look it up on their own. So he's like, yeah, whenever you think they're ready, when your child is ready to watch porn, that's the time that you should give them the device. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you something. Coming from a child development, human development psychology place, I'm going to say far past that. And the reason for that is because phones and devices, phones and devices disconnect us from the reality of the world that we're currently living in. One of the reasons why people feel more lonely than ever, one of the reasons why people feel more disconnected than ever is because they're connecting or disconnecting through a device. It's a facsimile of real human connection, which is one of our core 3 human needs. So, and I won't go into the 3 core human needs right now, but connection is necessary. What devices do is they mimic connection.
The opposite.
And the mimicry of,
connection.
yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing, the mimicry of connection. Yeah, exactly. But when we mimic connection, we think we're getting it, but there's a fallacy there, and we cannot figure out what the cognitive dissonance is that's going on there.
What do you mean?
There's a level of cognitive dissonance where we think so devices, like what we're doing right now, is actually the best way we can use this tool. This is the best way because we're having a real live conversation with one another. We're seeing each other's faces. We're not disembodied voices. We're seeing each other. We're responding to each other's voices. We're responding to the vocal variety. We're responding to our facial expressions and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
This is the best way we could use this device. When we're dealing with social media, when we think we're connecting to all of our friends and families, we're not really connecting because what we're seeing is a surface level component to that. When we're liking people's social media posts, when we're seeing an Instagram photo, when we're seeing any of those things that we're thinking we're getting a snapshot moment of them, but the reality is a snapshot moment could have, the minute before that photo was taken, could have been a horror show. Someone could be smiling for a photo and right before that have been battered by their partner. So what we're not seeing is the full nuanced context on the ground. But if you were to see somebody in person and you watch them and let's say you're walking past and they got a picture, but you actually experience the emotional contagion, which is the mirror neurons dispersed across our brains that actually help us catch someone else's feelings. You can feel the tension behind the smile. You can feel the tension that somebody's carrying in their shoulders. You can actually feel that thing. We're not feeling all of it. A really great photographer might be able to do that, but not in an instant shot. So what's happening is it's a facsimile of it. It's not the original component of it. It's just a photocopy of it. That's it. It's just a play on what it is. So we think we're getting these true connections by constantly messaging with our friends and stuff like that and saying, no, I refuse to have a phone call with you, but I'm okay with messaging. But how often do people misconstrue someone else's message?
Oh boy,
Because, right?
all the time.
And a part of that is because our perceptions are our own and their perceptions are their own. Our belief systems are our own and values and theirs are theirs. So when they might be saying, no, this is what I meant, and you're saying, no, but this is what I thought you meant, and and now you're disconnecting from one another. So going back to having real conversations, real connections means removing the devices from the picture.
But I have 200 or 2,000 friends online.
Right. That's not really real.
Like, and you think of it, like, it's really absurd. Like, how, I wonder, there's got to be, there's probably a study out there. This would be worth looking up on, like, what is the magic number of, like, really true, intimate friends that you can have? There's got to be a number where it gets like, hey, like, when you get to 200, like, it's just.
I'm going to tell you something. When you're young, it's okay. If you have 2 or 3 dear friends, that's all you actually need. If you have 2 or 3 people in your life who know you inside and out, who you can say anything to, who you can share your worst vulnerabilities with, your most shameful secrets with, you can really share and know they won't judge you, that's all you really need in life.
Well, here's the sad thing. I wish I could remember the source that I just read this in. Said in the survey, that this huge survey that was done, they asked these men, like, when you're in really like a tough time, who can you call on? Who's someone that, like, how many people could you call on to share this intimate thing? Like, for example, man, I'm addicted to porn, like, and just to share this intimate detail with. In the survey, most of them said none, like that there was 0 people that they could open up to.
Yeah. And often it's because men are taught that they shouldn't, that they should suppress. So we go back to the suppression issue. But I will tell you this. Okay. The natural inclination of parents is to raise their children where the girls are the nurturers and the men are supposed to be strong and competent and everything. The problem with that is this. For girls, when they're trained and they're taught you should care for others, care about others, nurture others, care for them. What that transitions to from when they're little and they're playing with their baby dolls is care for others, care about others, care what others think of you. What happens as a result? They go online, they put out their social media stuff, and they care greatly about what others are thinking of them. And that, here's what that does. It rises their image esteem over their self-esteem. And I'll talk about what that means in a moment. But this is the problem. When boys are told you've got to toughen up, you've got to be confident and capable and able to take care of everybody else's needs, what it teaches them is don't take care of your own needs. And again, their image esteem of like, oh, you need to see me as competent and capable, not because I should care about you, but because I should take care of you. And then again, image esteem rises over self-esteem. Okay, so now the distinction between self-esteem and image esteem. Self-esteem is what you think of yourself really deep inside and the value you place on what you think of yourself. Image esteem, it's not what others think of you. It's your perception of what others think of you and the value you place on it. So as soon as you keep pushing your kids to not take care of their internalized needs to ensure that they feel good about, build their own self-esteem and self-worth, regardless of what others think of them, you are building a person who is much more geared to looking outwards for what they need instead of inside.
So it sounds like that most people, including myself growing up, were more focused on image esteem, on what others think about me. Yeah, and so that leads to the whole thing. Like when I first started to try and overcome porn addiction, I was thrown into the traditional model where you go to these meetings and you say, I'm powerless and I'm a sexaholic or I'm addicted to porn. And you literally say that at every meeting, like when you introduce yourself. And after many, many years of that, it wasn't working. And so the one day I decided, I found the little app and I decided I'm going to make my login as Powerful Eric. And so that change was for me, like, so I could overcome this addiction. And that's a critical part of the program when men start working with me, is to change the way they see themselves.
Right. The way they see themselves inside. You have to go inside, pull it all out, and actually be able to look at it. So here's the thing. Parents oftentimes unknowingly put their children into image esteem places. So sometimes they really don't always do it actively. There are plenty of parents who do, but even parents who, to the best of their ability, are trying to foster a child who's resilient in themselves and who's capable and has a self-worth and a belief system, even they will do it. And these are what I call unspoken signals. These are the signals we send our kids that we don't talk about, but we just do. And they're pulling signals from that. They're building their own belief systems and values based off of what we're not saying more than what we say. So it's really important to measure our signals and see, oh, what signal is this sending my child? So for instance, the image esteem thing, I had a client who, said that she was frustrated because her husband always wanted her son to wear button-down shirts and slacks to school. He thought that was really important. He needs to dress appropriately to present himself and be confident and show and wear that. And that was what her husband needed to do that for himself. And she was like, all my son wants to do is wear his jeans. That's all he wants to do. So one of the things I tell parents is be an observer of your children to figure out what they want to do and let them lean into that, because they're going to find what makes them happy and what doesn't. And there's going to be plenty of time as they're influenced by their peers for them to go through that period of image esteem issues. We all go through it. It's fairly inevitable that we go through it, but it is important as a parent to check in with your kid. Is that really what you want to wear? Or are you wearing that? I noticed that you love your red sweatpants, but I noticed recently, you always tell me how much you love those red sweatpants, but I noticed recently that you never wear them to school. What's going on? Oh, well, my friend made fun of me for wearing them and da 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 da. Okay. Do you love your red sweatpants? And then really have that conversation, that nuanced conversation, to decide whether they're truly happy making that choice or whether they're actually making that choice because of the image esteem peer pressure that they're receiving. But as a parent, it's not necessary for us to push that on them, and I'll have a really funny story for this. My son was 4 and it was the summer and we were like, and my sister and I wanted to run over to Barnes and Noble. So I said, okay, you ready to go? And he looks at me and goes, I want to wear my pajamas. I said, okay, well, it's warm enough outside. He was wearing like shorts and a short sleeve shirt of pajamas, and they were really adorable. They were clearly pajamas. He wanted to wear his construction worker's vest, his construction worker's hat, and his Mickey slippers. And I said, looks great to me. I said, the only thing you have to keep in mind is because in our house, one of our house rules is that we don't wear our outside shoes all around our house. I said, the Mickey slippers are going to end up being outdoor. We double checked. It wasn't rainy or anything or wet. I said, Mickey slippers won't get ruined, but they will become outdoor slippers. Are you okay with that? And he said, yeah, of course. So off we went to Barnes & Noble with him dressed that way. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. One day he went to school just this past year with, and he's only 6 now, but he went to school with 2 different shoes on. I said, okay, let's look at them. They're both the same kind of shoe. They were just in 2 different styles, coloring and everything. I said, okay, so then you won't have a problem making sure that your shoes are, because sometimes some of the heels are thicker and so on. I said, all right, if that's what you want to do, let's go for it. Your kids have plenty of time to be pressured into dressing to conform. So the best thing we can do is not pressure them whenever possible. That is one of the best things we can do. Yeah.
I was going to go into having conversations with our kids about pornography, but I think instead of that, because we're running out of time here, I'd love to hear you have a unique experience in that your father was a Holocaust survivor.
Yes.
And how can we take some of the things that you learned from that and about beliefs and helping men to overcome addictions? What's your story with your dad?
Yeah. Yeah. So my father, he was a young child when he was born in Warsaw, Poland, and he was born in 1937. So as the war escalated, his parents, long story short, his parents separated out from him and his sister, and he ended up in a 5-year journey, rescued by complete strangers from Tehran, Iran, who ended up saving the lives of 1,800 Polish Jews. And they made it to Israel, and then he was adopted in Israel. So, but his parents were gone. They were lost in the war. His father ended up in a work camp in Russia, and his mom actually made it to Israel, but she died before they got there. So here's what was incredible to me. My belief about that and my belief about the Holocaust is that inherently, of course, it was a net negative for the world, for humanity, for us as a species. But one of the things I came to realize was that I wouldn't be sitting here today if it weren't for the kindness, the absolute heroic kindness of strangers.
Yeah.
Who, out of the compunction to understand that this was evil, not right, and they needed to help, they took it upon themselves to completely save my father, which resulted in me being here today. So I had a choice, and this is what's really interesting about beliefs and true about beliefs. We still have a choice. We have a choice whether or not we want to believe that thing, that belief that we've set up. We get that. That's probably the only choice we have in life. We have oftentimes very few choices on some of the things that happen to us, but we can choose how we want to move forward with it. So when I was 16, I was visiting the Holocaust Museum in Israel, and I had a revelation. I was going through the children's section, and the children's section is just horrifically painful because you're walking down this long corridor and there's mirrors everywhere and they're reflecting millions of candles flickering. And over a sound system, all you hear are names and ages. And those are the names and ages of the children who were killed. And after I walked out of there, I realized I could have heard my father's name on that just as easily as I didn't.
Yeah.
So I got a choice whether or not I wanted to be angry at the horrors of what people could do to other people or grateful at the heroic possibility of other people. And I chose gratefulness. And that was like the first life lesson that I really actively looked at and came to. And I got to choose gratefulness. So yes, Hitler was, for all accounts and possibility and reasoning, a net negative for humanity. But you know what he was for some people, for a small measure of people? He was a net positive for them. So I go back to the understanding that I believe he was a net negative, but for some people, I understand he was a net positive. And that's okay for them and for me to understand that. And that's how I was able to destroy the belief and take away the learning from the Holocaust and the experience my father had and the experience many, 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 many millions of others, not just Jews, but many people who were persecuted and killed just simply for being who they were. And I go back to the understanding that we can dismantle a belief if we're willing to look at the totality of it and what it can do for us as a tool, and when it's detrimental to us as a weapon, a crutch, or an addiction.
A lot of the guys that come to me, one of their beliefs when they first come to me is, I'm a piece of shit. So what you're saying is they can change that belief.
Absolutely. Because here's the difference. They can believe that they're a piece of shit, or they can believe that the things that they were doing are pieces of shit, or not necessarily in their best interest,
Yeah.
right? Because all thoughts and emotions have a place and a space. Not all behaviors do.
Yeah.
So we can change those behaviors by understanding and accepting that our thoughts and emotions are just simply a part of who we are as human beings.
Yeah. They're separating the action from the person. Like, I am not my actions.
Right.
I'm not even really my beliefs. Really, I mean, ultimately, I believe I'm a spark. I'm a spark from God. That's ultimately I'm light.
Yeah.
And
Your
so
light and energy.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
So
all
if
you
you
are.
look at yourself from that perspective, God don't make no junk.
Yeah. I got that from death too. And the way I got that from death was seeing dead bodies in the aftermath. The spark that lit them up. Who you are at an essence is not your body. It's not what you do with your body. It's not what you do. It's not your thoughts. It's not your emotions. It's something a lot more intangible, and it's the spark of energy that you actually are. And it's one of the reasons why I truly firmly believe that when people die, they just move into a different energy form. And it's not an energy form we as living human beings in this meat suit can actually see, you know?
Yeah, and that's what I like to use as a meat suit, because
Yeah.
I'm not going to get in this now, and next year I'm going to come out with this story that happened to me. But many years ago, I had a paranormal experience, and so I can definitively say that I know that there is another side. I know we go on. It's not a belief, like, I believe, I know it, and again, I don't say that out of ego. It's just I learned it. Like this thing happened.
You
So
experienced it.
and it totally changed my life for the better. Well, at first it wasn't for the better, but ultimately it was for the better. It
Yeah.
totally changed my whole worldview and of myself, and that this is just the meat suit, and so why not, while we're in this meat suit, make the most of it and be
Yeah.
kind to each other and leave the world a better place.
Yes. That's always a beautiful idea and always a beautiful thing. And because we can't forecast or predict the future, but we can learn in hindsight, the best thing we can do is try to take away learning from what we've already been through so that we can just simply progress forward. Because you don't have to be perfect, but you can be in pursuit of progress.
What would you say to the person that is having challenges with an addiction, and they really believe, their belief is, I've been trying to break this for years. I just don't believe I can do it.
I would ask them how that belief has served them.
And that's a good point, because I was on a podcast with several other uh, addiction recovery coaches, and I said, that I am not a fan of the disease-based model of addiction. The disease-based model of addiction says you have a disease and that you have it for life, and there's nothing that can change that. And they did not agree with me. They said that, well, it is a dis-ease. There's a dis-ease in the body, and it is a disease. And I'm like, well, yeah, there is this dis-ease in the body. But my question, and I didn't bring it up on that podcast, was, is that serving the people, like the people that are trying to overcome the addiction? Is that helping them? And I'd say, if it is helping them, Just say, I have a disease and it really is helping, and then great. But
that's when you look at it as whether it's a tool, a weapon, a crutch, or an addiction.
oh, yes.
A lot of people have this issue. If they've been diagnosed with something, they say, okay, the reason I'm behaving this way, I can use this as a crutch because the reason I'm behaving this way is because of my diagnosis. So you can't blame me for it. Well, they're not using it as a tool to learn. They're using it as a crutch to excuse their behaviors. Some people take their diseases and diagnoses and throw weapons at other people for them. The reason I'm treating you so badly and the reason I'm abusing you is because I'm an addict. Now they're using it as, So again, you take a disease or a diagnosis and you just ask yourself, are you using it to the best of your ability as a tool?
I love that. I love that. That makes making decisions and thoughts about beliefs much easier. So, well, anyway, Yarona, we're about out of time here. This was a fascinating conversation. So there's people that are listening, like, man, she's really interesting. And what's this book or books that she's got? So, where can people go to learn more about you? Maybe to pick up a copy of some of your books. Where can they go?
Footprintscoaching.org. That is my website.
And
Footprints in the plural, coaching.org.
Footprintcoaching.org, everybody.
.org, and it's footprints plural. Like, you have more than one foot. So footprints. So it's footprintscoaching.org. Yeah.
And we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
So, well, and also, who would be your perfect for what you're working on right now? Because I know you wear many hats and do many different things, but who's your perfect client right now? Like if I were to refer someone to you.
People who want to learn how to communicate better. Whether that's a parent, a leader, a CEO, a speaker, anyone who wants to learn the art of communication and master it so that they can improve their lives by communicating better, by using the tools that I give. Yeah. Those are the people who can come to me.
All right. Well, Yarona, I like to close with this quote that's from Zig Ziglar. It says, "You are designed for accomplishment. You are engineered for success, and you are endowed with the seeds of greatness."
This is Porn Talk Live. Here is your host, Eric Zuzak. Are you struggling with porn or sex addiction? Then apply for a free strategy call with Eric today at powerfuleric.com.